Welcome back to the videos, guys. This is episode 4 of our LS swap Honda S2000 build. This episode is all going to be wiring related. 95% of this is going to be wiring related. So if this is something you're going to need help with, follow along. First and foremost, we're going to be working on engine coolant temp sensor. With the ID4 motion display, swapping that out, you have to do a little bit of modification to the ECU side of things. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I will also put a picture right here. Feel free to take a screenshot. And this is going to show you what you need to change. It'll be a gray connector and a blue connector, and it'll be a yellow and green wire and a red and white wire. What we're going to have to do is cut that yellow and green wire, splice it into the red and white wire. We're going to do this with a crimp style like blade connector. That way we don't have to have anything exposed, and that should settle our engine coolant temp sensor. I'll show you exactly where it's at on the LS because it screws right into the cylinder head. So let's flip you around. We can get a shot of that, and then we can go ahead and get inside the car, cut up the connector. It's just one wire, not that big of a deal. I am going to leave enough on there though that if we needed to, for whatever reason, put it back to factory, we could then do so. So if you come right here, you can see that factory connector. We've got it plugged in already, and it just bolts right into the side of the head. Same thread and everything. Just put some Teflon tape on it, make sure it doesn't leak. On this side, you can see our GM style connector as well. So that's good to go. And that will feed the Haltech unit. The lighting's not going to be the best in here. I can't take the convertible top off yet because there's no power running to the body. But if you come in here and you look at this wire, I've got it pulled out already. That's our red and white from our blue. If you would like to reference the photo I put up on the screen earlier, that would be helpful as well in some cases. So you got 1, 2, 3. It is going to be the far right with the connector upside down in the center. So out of those center 3, it's going to be far right, red and white. And then if we come over, you can see we've got our green and yellow wire already pulled out, ready to be clipped and then spliced in to this guy. So it'll be super easy, super quick, not that hard. Just finding the wire is going to be your biggest pain in the butt on this, and it's not that bad. For this guy, with the connector flipped up, it'll be top left, all the way to the left. So as you can see, we got that guy cut. Here is our red and white wire that we're going to be, sorry, not that one. Where did you go? As you can see, there's our red and white wire that we're going to be teeing off of. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hook up the ECU, make sure we have enough play in each of the wires for what we're about to do. And then we'll put the ECU up into place inside the footwell there and crimp that guy on. And that should be good to go. We'll be good on the ECU side. Won't have to make any more modifications down here. I should also state that if you're going with an aftermarket dash like a Haltech, in this case where we're using a Haltech ECU, or Aces or Holley, this will not be necessary. This is if you're wanting to keep the factory dash, factory display, and or the ID4 motion display while you are doing this swap. This will be necessary to get that temperature sensor to work and to show on the dash. This is our factory ECU. As you can see, factory style Honda. Come over here to our clips, and you can actually visualize what's going on here. So we got 3 of these guys. If you look at our clips, our connectors. You can see we got the 3 that plug in, and then we got a dead one right there, which is not used. So we'll plug these guys in, take a look at where everything sits, and then crimp our wire from there. So take our ECU just like this, and from there we can go ahead, plug everything in its respective plugs, if I can find them. This guy goes in the center. Your small gray one is center. Your blue one is then right, if I can get it. Just like that. Make sure you keep that wire that you're going to be tapping into separate. We've got them up here, so we know exactly where we need to go with it. And then take your last gray connector, the bigger one, and it goes all the way on the end, clips in, just like that. So now ECU is plugged in. We can go ahead, find the best spot for us to tap this wire. Since I will be doing this up underneath the dash, not really a great way for me to show you, but I can show you afterwards when I've done it. That way you can see what it should look like when you're done. There's just not a whole lot of space and not a whole lot of light, at least that I can do while I'm underneath there. We've now got the ECU mounted up. As you can see, we've got 1 bolt in there. Maybe you can't, oh, there it is. We've got 1 bolt in there just to hold it up while we're doing this. And then there is a rubber mount at the very top that slides into a little bracket. Let's see if we can get you better. Right there at the top corner. You can see there's that little bracket and a little rubber piece that slides into it. So now we can go ahead, get those wires crimped together, and we'll be done down here. Just like that, we've got it all set up. You can see where we used the red crimp, and then I did just extend that wire because there was not enough space. So that is all good to go now, and we should actually be able to read coolant temp. Another bonus to being done here is that I can fold the carpet back into place and get all of this buttoned up, and we don't have the wires just hanging down for the ECU. A little side note for you, if you're doing a lot of wiring work and you're crimping a lot, this guy right here, let's see if you can see that, Wi-Fi, these are super nice and good for getting a nice good quality crimp and something that's not going to break loose. They don't let you over crimp it, so you're not going to cut through it or bust through it. They lock in place when you're done. That way it takes up a little bit less space in your toolbox, easier to put into a bag, whatever it may be. But they don't let you over tighten it. They kind of pop open when you're done, when you've got the tension that you need on the butt connector. So those are super nice. Just sharing my tool experience with you. So this is gonna be a super easy one for me. The brake fluid sensor is just gonna pop right back up through there. We'll plug that in, be done with that. This guy next to our brake booster and our brake sensor plug is for an AFR and boost gauge. Not that we're using the boost anymore, but I do want the gauge to function. I do want the AFR levels. Even though this ECU tunes itself using the onboard wideband that it's going to have, I do want to actually be able to see what's going on. So we will plug that in, but not yet. We'll wait till everything else is done. That way I know where I have space, because that's important, but it's not the most important thing for the moment. Right now, I need to figure out how to get the trunk open. I need to get power to the body harness, and then we can try and pop the trunk open, because that's where the battery is now going to sit. As you know, when I got this car, or maybe you don't. If you don't, I got this car, the battery was in the trunk, used really crappy gauge wire. It didn't work when the car got hot. It just didn't want to crank. There wasn't enough wire there for the draw it needed. So we got some beefier cable, so we should be good there. But there's already kind of a lot going on in the engine bay, and I don't want to add to it. This all will get tidied up, but I don't want to add more to that corner than I need to. And this is going to be one way I can mitigate what is up front. Along with the added weight of the LS in the front, it would be nice to have a little bit moved to the back to kind of help. I know it's just a battery, but every little bit that we can put over the rear end of this car is going to help tremendously. So just now, I came over. It doesn't look pretty, but it worked for the moment. You know, sometimes you do what you gotta do. But this worked. I was able to get power to the body harness, pop the trunk. So now the trunk is open. I don't even remember what it looks like in here. I know that there's no carpet. Oh, we got some old plastics. And our heat wrap. We will actually be using that. Some wire. And a test light. So now that we have this open though, like we can go ahead and we can run the battery back here and just not close this until it's done. Actually, now would be a great time to drop the top. I don't know if it will let us. It might have to be connected to a speed sensor, but we're gonna try, because if we could get this thing open while we're doing all of this, it will make life easier for sure. So let's find out together. I have to plug the center console back in, and then we'll try. Sweet. You know, this might not seem very exciting because it's not. But this is good because, let's see. Nope, nada. Oh, dummy. You gotta turn the car on. Ooh, okay. Top is back. Sweet. Okay, that'll make things easier. I'm gonna go ahead, turn the car off, unplug it from the battery because, well, we're not ready for it yet, but we will be when we go to wire up our ignition for the Haltech. I did notice something else, which is good. I'll flip you around and show you. But the entire time that I was running the Honda, our coolant temp never worked. But I'll show you how I know it's working now. So if we come down here and wait for it to boot up, the coolant gauge is at 0, and before it was all the way at hot. It was like that all the time, every time. So the fact that it is now reading nothing is good, because that means that it's recognizing that temperature is below a certain threshold, and so it's not displaying anything on the display. Also, you can tell maybe why I wanted to keep that display. It's pretty nice. It's pretty, it's simple, it's a little bit more modern than the old style AP1 gauge, but with the retro kind of, I don't know how you would describe that, the sweep across the screen. So that's cool. I'm glad all of that's working. Let's unplug the battery and start running some cables, get it mounted in the back. So we've got our 2 gauge wire right here, ran all the way up into the mess that is the floor at the moment, and then we'll run that through the firewall into the engine bay, and that will hopefully be enough length. I started with 12 feet, so ideally we won't have to go more than 12 feet. If we do, then it is what it is, but we'll figure it out. And then I've got 15 feet of 4-gauge wire, and that's just for the Haltech. So that's a direct feed from the battery for the Haltech ECU and nothing else. One of the reasons that you're feeding 4-gauge direct to the ECU or to our Haltech system is it doubles as a PDM, a power distribution module. So how I talked about us being able to run power directly to the fans from the ECU, this is part of that, and you have other optional outputs as well. So it's going to draw its own deal of power from the car, which is why, like I said, you run 4-gauge directly to it. Was definitely a good choice to take the top down and give us all this space to work. So what we'll do is we'll run it down through here underneath the carpet along the rocker panel and then back up and through the firewall. One thing I did do was plug wires. I tried to get something that was pretty close to the silver in the engine bay. This is about as close as I could find, and this is by Dragonfire. They got a couple different color options if you're interested. I just picked them up off Amazon. Not terribly expensive. I think they were like 65, 70 bucks. So we got all 8 of these. We'll go ahead and plug these in, and then we will start finishing the battery. I got distracted, so I wanted to put these on. I just remembered I can't do that yet. We can later on in the video, but we can't do that now. Got to put the headers on before we can put the plug wires on. So back to the battery. What we are going to do at the moment is get this side of the car jacked up, because all of our wires are essentially going to run down through there and back into the foot area of the passenger side and get tucked up along there. And what we need access to is to pull our harness back through. That way we can take it up and out. And I need to make this hole a little bit bigger for that grommet to sit in. And then I'm going to make a separate hole for our fuse box, as well as our relays, and then our power cables. Here is a little bit better of an angle of why we're jacking it up. We've got to pull, this is our Haltech harness. We got to pull that back through. Comes right, let's see if we can get right there. Comes right through that firewall. We'll pull that back out, make the grommet hole a little bit bigger so the grommet can actually sit. And then we got to make another hole for this guy to sit in. If you guys are curious on exactly what size to get for the Haltech grommet, this is, let's see if you guys can see that, 2.5 inches. And this should fit that grommet pretty perfectly. There's 2 sides. There's a smaller side and then a larger side. The smaller side should fit this whole saw bit almost perfectly. So we're gonna go ahead, drop that harness back through. Now that that's done, I made a little bit of a mess and I scratched up the brand new paint, but nothing we can't fix. Shouldn't be that bad. I'll flip you around and show you. So originally I was gonna try and just make that hole a little bit bigger, but I figured I'd keep that for the fuse block, and then all those wires can come straight up, fuse block right here. And then this is going to be our Haltech harness hole. So that grommet right there should sit pretty dang perfect inside. Also, now you guys can see why I am moving the battery back to the trunk. There's just going to be a lot going on in that corner. We're not going to have the space really to put a battery up there. There's 2 options. I could either go under the front bumper, but then if I ever needed to change it, I'd have to pull the bumper off, and it'd be a pain in the butt. Or I can go to the trunk. The only problem with the trunk being my key doesn't really work. So if it dies, I have to jump it from the starter, and it'd be a pain in the butt, but it's better than pulling off the bumper every time that I need to take the battery out. Whatever a step down from 2.5 inches would be like perfect. It's just barely a little much, but it'll work fine. This will be fine. It just doesn't quite grab the sheet metal like I wanted it to, but that'll be fine. It does the job. And then this guy will run our fuse block up. Like I said, we'll get that hooked up, and then we can actually hook the battery up to this guy and start running wires for the starter, and then run one for the alternator. Even though we don't have it yet, we'll just have a little bit of extra length. That way we can trim back to what we need. We've got everything set in place. I'm gonna go ahead, plug our fuse block in, and we can get started, like I said, on running all the wires from the battery to the starter and one for the alternator. So I had hopped on the live stream and filming a little bit. Wasn't that good of a turnout. I know that it's holiday weekend, so kind of to be expected, but flip you around, show you what we did. We didn't do a whole lot, but we did do some stuff. So I want to show you that before we move on, so we're all up to speed. We got our battery cable ran up through. I know this looks like a mess. It will get cleaned up, but for the moment, it's what we're dealing with. Ran up to the starter, so now we'll run a lead from that up to our fuse block, and that's how we'll pull power. I also got our battery cable with a battery end on it, and we've got our lug on the 4-gauge wire. This is for our ECU. I'm gonna go ahead, heat shrink that up, show you guys how to do it, and hook that up to the lug for our battery. If you've never worked with heat shrink before, super easy, and it works exactly how the name insinuates. You get your heat shrink, you slip it on after you, or before you cut your cable to where you want it. Slip the heat shrink on, slip your lug on, then you're going to crimp this guy, slide your heat shrink back up. That way it sits over the lug and the cable itself. And then the next step I'm going to show you is heat shrinking. This will not only protect the exposed bit of wire, but it will make it look that much nicer, a little bit more professional, and make you look like you know what you're doing. None of us actually do. Let that gun warm up. We're on our middle setting with the lowest fan setting. That's about all we're gonna need for this. It doesn't require a whole bunch of heat. You come to about 2 to 3 inches away on this low setting. Slowly work your way around. Start in the middle and work your way out. And you can really just watch it close the gap as you're doing this. You don't want to get too close, and you don't want to be too hot. You're not trying to burn the heat shrink. You're just trying to shrink it. Just like that, we have a nice heat shrunk connection for our cable to our ECU. So no exposed wires, just our exposed cable lug. And that'll sit approximately here, wherever the lug for the battery is going to end up. Now that we've got this situated, what I'm gonna do is figure out exactly where I wanna run the cables for the ECU. I know it'll be on the passenger side, but I wanna figure out where they're gonna end up. And then I can go ahead and cut those, get them connected, and then we can hook the battery up and start our process for finding our accessory 12 volt and our ignition 12 volt to run to the ECU, and then we can power everything up, make sure everything is being seen, and start the setup process, which is going to be pretty cool. Like I said, we're probably not going to end up starting this today, but I do want to get it cranking today. I vacuumed it out a little bit, make it a little bit more bearable to work in, and I'm running into a little bit of an issue. I don't know exactly where I want to mount this guy. Really, my options are either I mount it on the side, something like this, which would be nice and keep it out of the way of people's feet for the most part, or I do something like that and keep the harness up and just have the lugs kind of exposed there. So I'm not really sure. So I think I'll leave enough cable to do either one, and then we'll kind of run it around and see what ends up working best. I almost wish that there was enough cable to run this to the trunk. That way I wouldn't have to worry about people kicking it, but it is what it is. So that's that. We've got the battery cables all heat shrunk, ready to go back here. I've got the power wire for the electronic steering rack, good to go. Ran up to where the alternator is going to sit up here. Now I need to make one that goes from the alternator to the starter, and then to essentially the battery and the fuse block. So I think what the plan is we're actually going to move it up to where the airbag sat. Not like we're going to be using this anyways. We'll put the ECU right in there and run the plugs up, and then that'll keep everything out of the way of people's feet kicking it and potentially messing things up. Couldn't quite reach all the way up to the top, but it is in a spot that we'll have access to if anything needs to be adjusted, but keeping everything off the floor definitely does that. So right now we're running our battery cables that are going to go to the ECU up through and then back down. We'll cut them to the lengths we need to be, put our lugs on the ends of those, and get those tightened down. Well, we now have power to the vehicle. So if we turn the key on, everything lights up as it should. It does crank. I'm not gonna go more than that because there's no oil in the car yet. But at the moment, we need to hook up our 12-volt switch wire, and we need to find our accessory. We need to find our accessory. There it is, accessory on. So if we switch off, it'll go off, but I'm using one hand to film, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. But it does go off, and then I believe I already said our coolant gauge is cooperating, so that's a bonus. Well guys, I was hoping to be able to start this for you this evening and go through the ECU and figure out what in the heck is going on, but oh, one more click. There we go. And I was hoping to be able to walk you guys through the process, get this figured out, and then go through it with you. But I'm pulling a code. I'll put it up on the screen, and if anybody has any ideas, feel free to let me know. Because I don't know what to do. I've changed the sensor, the cam sensor. It's a P1301. We cleared that, and then it was P1302, and it's been P1302 ever since. We've cleared it. We've tried changing sensors. I've re-looked at the wiring to make sure that it is wired for the sensor, and that all checks out. So I don't know. And I'm kind of stuck. So I've posted up on some Haltech pages if you guys know of anything or have any ideas, by all means, feel free. Drop them down in the comments below or reach out to me on Instagram. But that's going to be about where this video ends. So hopefully we can figure something out. Hopefully. What's up, little dude?
Tried to find a bobby pin, couldn't find one.
Yeah, we were thinking about switching the wires on the pigtail to see if we swapped signal and voltage supply, if it would do anything, but can't take it apart yet. So guys, obviously not in the shop, but thank you all for watching, first and foremost. Second of all, kind of an abrupt ending, and that's mostly due to we had a time crunch. We had to get the S2000 to the exhaust shop by a certain date, and this was because we have a car show coming up, and that car show is in a week from now, so it'll be about a week to 5 days from when you guys see this video. We had a deadline we had to meet. We didn't quite get the car running, but I'm pretty sure I know what happened. So stay tuned for the next video. Once again, thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Peace.